Hey everyone, this is Steve Hardy with Atlantic Coast Contractors. Today we'll be doing an instructional video for all white manufacturing. Today we'll be talking about the white Portland cement and the catalyst slurry mix. This is most commonly used on a tile roof covering, but can also be used on a modified bitumen roof covering that has some bigger overlap seams or rough areas. You always want to do a slurry mix across a roof that is going to have any voids underneath the coating, especially if you're doing a polyester membrane application. The base for the slurry mix is a white Portland cement, and you will then add in water and the catalyst mix. The catalyst mix is made with an evenol and a thermoplastic melt. This adds elasticity to the Portland cement slurry, and it's also going to make it a much stronger slurry compared to using a standard roof mortar or any roof mortar tile mix. When adding the catalyst mix to the cement slurry, you're going to prevent cracking on the roof covering. When applying it, obviously here we're doing it indoors, but when you're putting it on a roof, you have to make sure that the roof covering is not too hot. If the roof covering, give or take, is going to be over 110 to 120 degrees, you're either not going to want to put it down that day or you're going to want to mist it as it cures. If you put it down on a roof covering that is too hot, typically you're going to see it crack within 1 to 2 hours. So you'll always want to make sure that you mist the slurry mix as it's curing if you're doing it on a hot surface. And today we'll be showing you how to apply the cement slurry mix and also the correct ratios on how to mix a 5-gallon bucket. Today we're going to be installing ProBond 200 across a shingle roof covering. We're also going to be installing a Portland cement slurry mix across the shingle roof. Now, with the shingle roof, the most important part of installing the slurry mix is going to be to seal these water eyes. If you seal the front nose of a shingle, but you do not seal the water eye properly, you're going to end up trapping water that gets in through the water eye and creating a leak on the roof. So it's very important to get full coverage, but here we'll be showing you how to apply the ProBond 200 to the shingle roof covering. When you're installing ProBond 200 across a shingle roof, you do want to make sure that the sealer is going to seep into the water eyes of the shingles. It's important that you get full coverage on your application of ProBond 200. You don't want to miss any areas. You want to make sure that you're getting this anti-chalking agent and bonding agent on the entire roof covering. The ProBond 200 is going to go on to the shingle roof, and it's going to be a milky white as it is applied. However, once it dries, it will dry clear, and it will dry with a little bit of a sheen to it. So it will have a semi-high gloss sheen. And that's a good way to check to make sure you haven't missed any areas across the roof and to make sure that you've gotten full coverage. When applying the ProBond 200, it is good to cross-weave your roll pattern if you're unsure that you're getting full coverage. This will ensure that you're not missing anything. And now we're going to be installing ProBond 200 to a tile roof covering. The ProBond 200 must go on any application that's going to use R400 rubber. Typically you're going to take a 5-gallon bucket, dip your roller directly into the bucket, and then you apply it across the surface. Now the ProBond 200 is a very milky substance, so you have to be careful about runoff. We are using a smaller sample board so it doesn't mimic a real roof and the length that you have to catch the runoff. ProBond 200 can be sprayed across a tile roof covering, a flat roof covering. However, if you have a porous surface such as a modified bitumen cap sheet, you're going to want to roll it to ensure that the sealer soaks into all of the overlap seams or any rough areas of the roof. With a tile roof, you want to essentially coat the field sections of the roof first, and then you're going to come back and hit the nose seams. You don't want to just hit the field sections and skip the nose seams because you want to make sure that you're going to get a good bond on the entirety of the tile. When you install ProBond 200 to a tile roof covering, you are going to do it as a fairly thin application. You just want to make sure that you get full coverage, that you're not missing any of the overlap noses, and just make sure that you have everything covered to ensure that the R400 is going to get a good bond to the surface. Probond 200 is going to go on a milky white. However, it will dry clear, so it will be a little hard to tell which areas you've hit and which ones you haven't if you're stopping in between your applications. And now we're going to be showing you how to mix the Portland cement slurry mix. This slurry is fairly straightforward to mix. Now you're going to start with 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 gallons of water. And you're also going to use the same amount of catalyst in that same bucket. That's going to be 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 gallons. You're going to fill the rest of the bucket up to the top with white Portland cement, and this is the lightweight cement that we mentioned earlier. Now, with any bucket of catalyst, it's very important that you mix the bucket prior to pouring it into your mixing buckets. So we're going to go ahead and mix this one up here so everything in the bucket is even. So now that we have our catalyst bucket mixed, we're going to go ahead and add 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 gallons into our empty bucket. Go ahead. Now, a good rule of thumb to measure out 1 1/4 gallons is going to be approximately 3.5 inches from the bottom of the bucket. And with both parts in there, the catalyst and the water, you should end up at approximately 7 inches. Now, once you have your catalyst and your water in the bucket there, the best thing to do is going to be to slowly add in your white Portland cement. That way you don't clump up at the bottom and your mixing bit is going to get stuck if you put too much Portland in. So you want to add it as you go and thicken it as you go. Go ahead. Now you want to mix this well and you want to get a good even consistency. You're typically going to want to get it until it's thick enough to be a trowel grade application. If you see that your mix is a little bit too thin, go ahead and just add more Portland and keep mixing until you get the desired consistency. All right, now that we've got our Portland cement slurry mix mixed together, what you want to see is you want to see a smooth pancake batter-like consistency. You're going to end up varying your consistency depending on what type of roof covering you're going to be putting it on. Now this consistency is a little thinner than usual, but it's great for a shingle roof or for anything that has much smaller seams that are going to be filled. However, for a tile roof, you'll typically want to go a little bit thicker than this one here. So now we'll take our slurry mix and we're going to move over to our shingle sample board and show you the application. Now, when applying the cement slurry across a shingle roof, you typically are going to want to go at a diagonal angle running up the slope. That way you're filling all of the water eyes and all of the overlap seams. So this is going to be the best way to do it and the best method. Now, once you've got a semi-uniform application, you're going to want to run it horizontal across the roof to make sure that all of the water eyes are sealed and that you're also spanning the gap between the overlap of the top shingle to the lower shingle. Now, basically when you're applying this cement slurry mix, you just want to get everything uniform so there's no pinholes, no open seams. Just want to make sure that you have a solid, smooth surface with no open penetrations that you have to worry about getting the R400 rubber into. Once you come close to finishing up with your cement slurry, you're going to want to run over it vertically. That seals all of the water eyes and it also seals all of the front nose overlaps. And then you end up with a solid concrete surface, and when you apply your rubber, it's going to have a very good application rate, and it's also going to be very smooth. All right, now over here we've applied the Portland cement slurry mix to a shingle roof covering. This is a 3-tab shingle. We've let it cure overnight so everything's nice and solid. Now with any roof covering that you're going to apply the Portland slurry mix to, you will need to do sealer before the application and after the application. After we have the Pro Bond across our cured catalyst here, then everything's going to be ready for 2 coats of R400 rubber. As I mentioned before, with the Portland cement slurry mix, it is crucial to make sure that you're sealing all of the shingle overlap nose seams and also the water eyes, most importantly. With the slurry mix, you want to make sure that you have a full application and that, especially at the water eyes, that there's no pinhole at the very top of the water eye. And you can see here on this sample board, we've got every water eye and every overlap seam sealed near perfectly. Now we're going to go ahead and apply Pro Bond 200 to our slurry application over a shingle roof. Now with the shingle roof, the Pro Bond 200 application is much easier to do than a tile roof because you don't have any nose seams that it has to be pushed into. It is essentially just rolling the Pro Bond across a flat surface. And you can see for a smaller section like this, it's only going to take one dip for approximately half a square. Okay, we're all finished up with our Pro Bond 200 application over the Portland cement slurry mix. This is the final step for the Portland cement slurry application. After this, you're ready to go ahead and put down your R400 rubber. All right, now we're going to be applying the Portland cement slurry mix to a tile roof. This is going to be necessary on an open tile roof that's never been coated before. And we're going to use this to seal all of the nose seams across the tile and also to seal the field overlap seams. This will ensure that it's a solid concrete surface with no open penetrations, and that'll need to be done before you put down the R400 rubber. That's good. Now, when applying it to a tile roof, you're going to need to run both directions, and you may even need to run it vertically in order to seal all of the field seams. Now, once you've got a fairly uniform application, it's always good to go ahead and check your corner seams. You can use a sponge to go ahead and clean it up and give it a nice clean look. This will also ensure that it's getting pushed into some of the smaller seams that may have been missed by the squeegee. And you can also get rid of any heavier application areas or get rid of any areas that may create a bumpier look on the roof covering. Now, when you're sponging the Portland slurry mix, you're going to want to make sure that your sponge is very wet If you use a sponge that's too dry, it's going to clump up on the sponge, and that will be a problem as you're trying to smooth it out. All right, we've applied our slurry mix to the tile roof covering here, and typically it's going to dry within 4 to 5 hours. However, we always like to let it cure overnight just to make sure that everything's solid. Now, once the slurry mix is cured on the roof covering, you will need to do one more coat of ProBond 200. This will ensure that you get a good bond with the rubber directly to the catalyst, because you don't want to go through all this work and have a bad bond between your catalyst and your R400 top coats. So we're going to go ahead and start applying ProBond 200 across the tile roof covering that already has the cured catalyst across it. Now, when applying your slurry mix, it is going to drip down the roof, so you have to be careful to make sure you're not dripping across the ground. Just like the initial application, you're going to want to make sure you get a full coverage. You will see a slight change in color once the ProBond 200 is applied, and that helps you to determine whether you've gotten full coverage or whether you need to put down a little bit more. Because we're doing a smaller roof section here, I'm only doing half dips. However, on a larger roof, you would be taking full dips out of the bucket and just watching out for the drips that are going to run down the roof. Sometimes it's good to have a second person below where you're working at to make sure that the sealer does not slide off the roof and hit anything important like a car, a driveway, etc. Now, just like the initial application, you're going to want to make sure that you get it on every section of the tile roof. So you're going to want to make sure you push it into the nose seam. And normally, if you have a higher contoured tile roof, you would use an 1¼ nap. This is a fairly straightforward, small contour tile, so I'm using a 3/4 inch nap instead of the 1¼ here. And that's it for our ProBond 200 application. Once this cures, we're ready to go ahead and start installing R400 rubber across the tile roof.